Hey guys, it's Andriatic. Mercy got some pretty big changes to her kit in Season 4, mainly in her Guardian Angel, and after a couple weeks of playing with these new changes, I've come up with a new guide on how to adapt to and play with the new Mercy in Season 4. Since we're having to relearn this hero every season now, there's probably going to be another one of these for Season 5. So to start off, let's look overall at her changes first, starting with the first change, to her healing. These are, the healing was increased from 45 to 55 HPS, and her healing is no longer increased for allies below 50% HP. This is essentially a full revert to what her healing was prior to Season 3, in which case I won't really have to explain a lot on the playstyle differences this entails since we've all been there, done that. I'll admit, I wasn't expecting this sort of change and was sure the devs would try to keep the new triage healing concept around, but just nerf it a little because it was definitely pretty strong. The main difference this brings is that Mercy isn't as good at saving people now like she was in Season 3. Just like prior to Season 3, she's best utilized for damage boost, and you'll only really want to play her when you're paired with decent pocket DPS like Vera, Ashe, or Echo for example. One of the hardest things in my opinion to get used to, in regards to the healing changes, is realizing that we can't really use Valk defensively like we could in Season 3. You'd think this wouldn't be super hard to adjust to since before Season 3, obviously, this is what we played with, but going from those mass damage boost Valks to starting to use defensive ones more often, and then straight back to the damage boost ones does feel a little jarring if I'm being completely honest. Valk can of course still be used defensively in some cases if you're using it for extended beam length or chain healing, but in most cases it's back to being an initiator tool just like before. In regards to the healing changes as well, it is good to note that Mercy has kept her passive that was introduced in Season 3, Sympathetic Healing. And this healing revert does indirectly nerf that since the self-heal is based on a percentage of the amount of healing you're doing, so Mercy did slightly lose some of the survivability she gained from the passive. Overall for her healing, as I've said, there's not really a lot that we really need to discuss since her overall playstyle has basically been reverted in that regards and we're familiar to how she was prior to Season 3, so let's move to the big elephant in the room, that's Guardian Angel. So, Blizzard honestly did a really poor job at wording these ones, so they left a lot of the community confused about what these changes meant for Mercy, so let's quickly discuss these changes and then get into how to play with them, even though I'm pretty sure by now you probably understand what the changes mean. The first change is that Guardian Angel's cooldown was reduced from 2.5 seconds to 1.5 seconds. And this is nice of course, this is a revert from Season 3. But here's where it gets complicated. The jump and crouch active ability state increased from 1 second to 1.5 seconds, and in addition to that, the jump and crouch active state can no longer be cancelled manually. And for those of you that don't know or just are unfamiliar with it, here's a quick comparison of what the change means by they can no longer be manually cancelled. Here's a clip of a super jump in Season 3 versus one now in Season 4. You'll notice in this clip, Guardian Angel's cooldown starts as soon as I start super jump. This is because I manually cancel the ability, as I jump, to maintain my momentum but start the cooldown earlier. This is a little tech that commonly done by Mercy players to maximize their Guardian Angel usage. This is essentially removed now, and as you can see here in the current Guardian Angel, this is no longer possible. Well, technically, but more on that later. Moving on, these Guardian Angel changes for Season 4 essentially mean that if you choose to use a slingshot or a super jump after you press either your jump or crouch button, Guardian Angel will automatically be active for an additional 1.5 seconds. This isn't super noticeable in max barred super jumps or slingshots as Guardian Angel cooldowns will start once you've completed the movement, giving you the normal 1.5 second cooldown. However, because of this forced additional 1.5 second active state, since it can't be manually cancelled anymore, shorter Guardian Angels that utilize techs or ones that don't fill the bar much leave you with anywhere from a cooldown that's an effective 2.5 to 3 seconds long depending on the distance you traveled. This inability to manually cancel and the increase in active state time can lead you with instances where you are literally walking after Guardian Angel is completed and it still won't start its cooldown. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure this makes Guardian Angel the only ability in the game that can remain active even after it's completely finished being used. I won't lie, this part of the change does feel really awful, and it is overall a big nerf to micro movements. In my personal opinion, one of these changes or the other would probably have been fine, but the combination of them is what feels so clunky. So because of that, I'm going to tell you some tips on how to adjust to this. So, to start off, because of the nature of these changes, you get more value from higher charged Guardian Angels as opposed to lower charged ones, and this is because you're keeping movement during the forced active state. On paper, you should basically never utilize techs like Slingshot or Super Jump unless they're max charge, as those are the ones giving you the best value. But that's not really a realistic answer. Max charge Guardian Angels can oftentimes leave you flying out of beam range or your ally, and this is because they shoot you really far, so it's pretty contextual. I would say try to aim more often to use higher charge Guardian Angels when you can, but you'll have to use your own judgment on when these are actually worth it or not. Additionally, learning techs such as Crouch Guardian Angel or Arc Guardian Angel can help you charge the bar faster at closer ranges and give you more distance at max charge, which can allow you to do higher charge Guardian Angels more often even when close to allies. I won't be covering how to perform these techs in this video specifically, but I may make a video on them soon. A good thing to keep in mind is that these nerfs only apply to techs like Super Jump or Slingshot that give you the extra distance. However, a normal Guardian Angel does grant you a lower cooldown, and in doing so, I think it would be a good idea to learn how to incorporate more normal Guardian Angels and Bunny Hops as your micro movements, as these give you a true 1.5 second cooldown. A playstyle that incorporates more Bunny Hops as micro movements, as opposed to a Slingshot related one, is a playstyle that gives up distance for added agility, and I think this overall playstyle change is what you want to work with mostly now. For those of you that are familiar with my content, you'll know I absolutely love Bunny Hops. They're one of my favorite techs. For those of you who don't know what a Bunny Hop is, it's a really simple tech that will greatly enhance your agility, and I believe that it's even more important than it was before. Since I've explained them in previous videos so many times, I'm going to just insert a clip from a previous video on how to perform them. These two techs are much more important now since they allow you to retain movement of your Guardian Angel after you've cancelled it. This is especially important now since Guardian Angel is a higher cooldown, so you want to be sure you're using it as efficiently as possible when you do use it. To Bunny Hop, you essentially just cancel Guardian Angel, then tap your jump binding as you touch the ground. If done correctly, you'll bounce when you hit the ground as Guardian Angel's cooldown starts. This is useful for rounding corners or getting a little bit of extra distance out of shorter Guardian Angels, and definitely helps smoothen out your movement. It's important to note that Bunny Hops cannot be performed mid-air and can only be performed on flat surfaces. I think getting used to these types of Guardian Angels when needed and not forcing a Slingshot when they're not needed will help your movement flow together a lot better and feel less clunky overall. Mercy players who aren't used to canceling Guardian Angel and stuff are really going to struggle with these changes, and it's something you're really going to have to actively think about until it becomes a habit. This is absolutely the hardest adjustment to make in terms of her new movement, especially with built-up muscle memory, but it is important to realize that this is a new Mercy, and it utilizes a new movement playstyle, and that trying to play her like previous seasons is going to feel bad and clicky. Here's a quick clip of the new movement and quick play. Notice how I'm only utilizing Slingshots and Super Jumps when they're needed, and outside of that, I'm using more cancelled or smaller Guardian Angels. This greatly enhances my overall agility mid-fight and allows me to keep moving and juggle my beam targets. Now, all of this can technically be disregarded because there's actually a bug with Guardian Angel right now where you can bypass the last change for Guardian Angel, being the manual cancel. And this bug allows you to essentially manually cancel your Guardian Angel and start the cooldown earlier, just like before. In order to do it, in simple terms, you just have to cancel Guardian Angel and press your jump or crouch at the exact same time. And this is actually a bit harder than it seems because the timing window seems to be really short and is near frame perfect timing. This bug is consistent if you can get the hang of it, but it is pretty hard to master, and it's actually a lot harder than crouching Guardian Angel in my opinion. I personally wouldn't go out of your way to put the time into learning this, as it'll likely get patched in the mid-season patch soon, or in the end of the season, as the devs have already stated they're looking at Mercy's movement to mess with again, which, yeah, I know. The only time I find this tech exceedingly useful, and the only time I purposefully really go for it, is when I go for super jump reses or I slingshot into a res. And this is because the new Guardian Angel change still leaves us with that lack of synergy with res, so it can be helpful to perform this bug on a super jump res so you can fly, resurrect, and then fly instantly again, as opposed to having that awkward pause you would normally get in a normal super jump or slingshot res. Personally though, I only use super jump reses to take high ground or to jump to cover as opposed to being in the middle of a normal res to add movement, and I do suggest you do this too. Speaking of bugs though, I would like to mention that Valk no longer resets Guardian Angel's cooldown, which is likely going to be fixed soon, but that's fun. The reason I say it doesn't properly reset is because it technically does, but it doesn't reset after a slingshot or a super jump, but does after a normal guardian angel, so just keep that in mind. If you need to Valk for the reset, but used a slingshot or super jump during that guardian angel, it may be worth waiting the first 1.5 seconds of active time and use Valk to reset the actual cooldown. But in instances like that, if it's life or death, it may be better just to save Valk and use it the next fight and not waste it. Moving on to the last changes, the regeneration passive has been added back to Valkyrie, which feels really nice and I am very glad to see it back. Something important to know, however, is that this auto regen passive added back to Valkyrie is the support passive and not Mercy's old regeneration passive, so it is a little bit weaker than before. But considering the sympathetic recovery passive is also available in Valk 2, I think this more than makes up for it. All in all, to wrap things up, as I've stated, this is a new Guardian Angel playstyle that's more agile and less distance focused. Micro movements involving slingshot or super jump are going to feel overall worse, but that doesn't mean they're useless, they're still great in certain scenarios. So reducing instances where you perform unnecessary micro movements will help her flow a little bit better. Mercy is still great in her niche, and that's being a highly mobile pocket support, and should still be played as such. She's not great in the current meta, but if you have pocketable DPS, she's still as great as she's always been. Personally, I do actually like this playstyle more than Season 3, but that's just me. I've always been a big bunny hop user, so naturally seeing that part of her kit basically reverted feels great to me. Outside of that, a lot of instances can feel really awkward. My hot take is that they should just completely revert all of her movement changes to before Season 3, and then just give Mercy 175 HP like Widow. I figure it would reduce her survivability like they want, but keep her movement smooth and fun. Plus we have the passive and stuff to help out with that, but that's just me. I've definitely seen people who would not be happy with that, and honestly, I'm just open-minded to really any changes because of what we keep getting. Anyways, that's all from me. I hope some of these tips and explanations help you better understand the new Mercy's Guardian Angel, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and I'll be sure to respond to it. Like and subscribe for more Mercy videos. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.